Hey, this is Gareth Vaughan from the Android Enterprise team. I'm going to be talking to you today about how to combine the usage report data that we deliver for Android Enterprise Essentials with other data sources that you might need to make sense of the data for your particular organization. In this demonstration, I'm going to be talking through an example reseller that I've set up. This reseller has two sub-resellers or vendors, and I'll be using the usage report data to help make sense of these particular sub-resellers in the way that they are referred to and used within the reseller organization. So let's start off by going to the Google Cloud Console, which is where we'll access BigQuery. You can get to BigQuery either through the left-hand navigation menu, but there's a lot of apps in there, so I find it easier just to search. Okay, so within BigQuery, you'll see your list of projects down here on the left-hand side. In this example, I've only got one set up, but hopefully you'll know which one you're using for this engagement. Under there, you'll find the data set that you created and gave to us as part of the Essentials product setup, and that's where we're delivering the usage report data. So within that data set, you'll find a data table named Essentials Usage Report. This is the table that we are updating every day with the daily usage data for your organization. So if I just query that first of all, just to show you how that looks. And you can see now the kind of data that's being injected. Start time, end time, the IDs of both the example reseller, the sub-reseller, and the particular customer, and then the actual usage data. Okay, but this is fine for a Google view of the data. It's using the IDs that exist within the Essentials product setup. But this particular company uses SAP to refer to their organizations. So we want to be able to map these IDs to the SAP IDs that the customer, that the reseller understands. So the way we're going to do that is by using a table to map between the different values. So I've created this table here in Google Sheets. In one column I have the zero-touch IDs that refer to the IDs we just saw in BigQuery. Then I've put these SAP IDs. Don't pay attention to the format, I've just made this up. This can be any format, but these are the IDs that this company will be using in their SAP system to refer to their resellers. I've also added in a third column with human readable names. So these are the friendly names that are given to these organizations that will help an operator recognize the data more easily. So we want to be able to combine this table, this sheet rather, with the data that we have in BigQuery. And the way we do that is by, first of all, adding that into BigQuery as a new table. So to do that, we'll go back to the data set and we'll create a new table within there. So we're going to use the Google Sheet as our source of data. So we'll change that to Drive. We'll copy the URL from the sheet and paste that in there. The file format will be Google Sheet. You don't need to change the sheet range, providing that's all that sheet is being used for. If you've got other data in there, you might want to specify the range. Then we need to give that a name. So I'm going to call that ZT0SAP map. The schema I'm going to auto detect usually does a pretty good job at working out what the data is. If you find you're getting any issues, then you might need to manually enter that. And under advanced options, I'm going to specify skip one row of header. That will then make sure that we're using this title row here as the field names rather than adding those in as data rows. That's all you need to enter here, and we'll go ahead and create the table. Okay, now it's telling us that's created, and you should be able to see that now underneath the data set as a new table. If we just go in and quickly query that table and just check that it looks okay. And there you go. We can see that we've got the table, the field headers are correct, and we've got the same values there that we had in our Google Sheet. So great, now that that exists within BigQuery, we can start to combine the two tables. I'm just going to copy this table name here, just save me some typing on the next screen. So if we now go back to the Essentials Usage Report, we'll query this table again as we did before. This query uses SQL format, by the way, so if you're not familiar with that, it's pretty simple to learn. What I'm typing here, select star, basically means use all of the fields in the table. I'm going to remove these limits because at the moment we want to just use the whole table. So basically this is saying copy the whole of this Essentials Usage Report table. What we now need to do is join that with the other table. So I'm going to use this inner join command, which basically looks for a matching field and then combines the two tables in their entirety where there's a matching row. So I'm going to paste in the table name that I just copied there, which is for the ZT to SAP map. And then with this inner join command, we have to specify which fields we want to join on. And what we're going to do is join the vendor ID from the Essentials Usage Report, and we're going to join it when it's equal to the zero touch ID from our table. Okay, the little exclamation mark has gone away, telling us that this format's now valid, so we can go ahead and run that. Great, now in this preview of the results, we can see that we've got all the data we had before for the usage report. But now added into this, we're adding the SAP ID that corresponds to that vendor and also the company name. You'll see some repetition here now between the fields. So the vendor ID and the zero touch ID will always be the same here. We could go ahead and change this command to not display some of these fields, but I'll show you in another video and probably an easier way of limiting down and just showing the data you want. So for now, we're going to leave the table just as it is. When we're querying like this, by default, the BigQuery is creating a temporary data to store this information. We can now make that a permanent location, so we can store that. The way we do that is going to the More menu, choosing the query settings. So we want to change from a temporary table to setting a destination where the table will be saved. We will give that a name. We'll call it usage report with SAP. And what we want to do is we'll choose to overwrite that table. So whenever we need to update this, we can just run this query again as new usage data comes in. I'll show you a more optimized way of doing that in the next step. That's all we need to change here. Now, if we go ahead and run that again, that will create that new table, and that table is now stored. We can see that the data is in there with the SAP and the company name, and we can now start to refer to that and use that in other places. There's one other change I would suggest you would want to make. Using this query will, as I say, copy the entire table each time, which as you start to get more and more users of Essentials will cause a lot of repetition of data. So it will become more efficient to actually just focus on the new data that's being injected. So the way we'll do that is by adding a limitation on the query here. So what I'm doing is adding this where field, which is specifying that we only want to select data that is basically in the last between 48 hours ago and 24 hours ago. The reason I'm using that window is we will run this query on a daily basis. And by having a window of 24 hours to 48 hours ago, it should get just the last day of data that was injected. If we didn't have that 24-hour limit, then there's a danger of introducing a race condition whereby If you happen to schedule this at the same time as Google was injecting the data into your usage table, you might get some results duplicated, just due to that timing issue. So by having this upper and lower limit, you can avoid that. So now if we ran this would just get the last day of data. So we want to change the way that is stored now. So instead of overwriting the table, we can just append the table. And that will then just append the last day of data to the table. And you can run that now on a daily basis to keep your table, including your SAP IDs and your customer names, up to date. You could now go ahead and create a schedule query, run that every 24 hours, and then you'll have this usage report table ready to use. And hopefully that will be easier to read for your users.